In this video, I'm going to show you how to turn this into this. It's quite a transformation, and these are probably some of the most delicious Brussels sprouts you'll ever try. Here's how I make them. The first order of business is to get a wet paper towel, spread that out on the counter, and that's going to keep my cutting board from sliding around because we've got a lot of Brussels sprouts to cut up here. But before that, I'm going to get some bacon going. This is a ½ pound of bacon. This was just a 1 pound package, and I took it out of the freezer and cut it in half while it's still frozen. Put the other half back in the freezer, and this sat in the fridge overnight. But I just got the pan on medium heat, and I'm just going to lay this bacon in the pan and get it a-cooking. And here's the Brussels sprouts. I didn't weigh them, but I'm thinking they're probably about a pound of Brussels sprouts here. And sometimes the outer leaves will be dirty or discolored, you know, kind of not very good looking, but that's no problem. You just got to peel off the outer few layers to get down to some clean leaves. It's easiest to just cut off the dry end of the stem part first, and then you can just kind of peel off as many layers as it takes just to get down to some fresh looking leaves there. And that looks pretty good. I'm just going to do the same thing on all of these Brussels sprouts, and I'm going to be tossing them in a colander here because I am going to give them a rinse here as soon as I'm done with that. And as you can see, they just look like little tiny cabbages, and that's pretty much what they are. I'm pretty sure they're a close relative of the cabbage. They do have a similar flavor as well. But the trimming and the peeling of the Brussels sprouts, it's a little bit of a tedious process, but not too big of a deal. This probably took me a grand total of maybe 5 to 7 minutes to do all these. And what I'm left with is a pretty sizable stack of leaves here that I'm going to discard. And you're probably wondering if I've still got any Brussels sprouts left. And oh yeah, there's plenty left. There's plenty left for dinner tonight. I'm just going to give those a quick rinse in some cold water in the sink. They're not very dirty, but just a quick rinse. And I'm just going to check on the bacon real quick, turn the pieces that need to be turned. And what we're trying to do here is render the fat off of this bacon. Meanwhile, I'm going to start slicing up these Brussels sprouts, and I like to do them pretty thick, probably about a 1/4 inch thick slices. And they're not all going to be the same, but I try to get them pretty close. And the outermost edges, the green stuff, is actually softer than the inner part, the yellow and the white stuff. And the outer stuff will kind of fall apart as it cooks, and you'll have some soft texture there. And the inner part is going to be kind of crisp, tender. So it's kind of there's multiple textures going on here when they're cooked, and I like that quite a bit. And some of the outer leaves will kind of come off as you're doing your slicing. No big deal at all. Just toss those in there with the rest. Those will be good too. And depending how big your Brussels sprouts are, you may just want to quarter them. Because if they're pretty small Brussels sprouts, that's about all you can do is just cut them into quarters, or maybe even halves if they're really tiny. But these are pretty good sized Brussels sprouts, and cut them in slices like this works pretty good for this size. And one more check on the bacon. Looks like it's coming around nicely. The next thing I'm going to do is prepare some cheese. This is cheddar cheese. This is my favorite cheese to use with this dish. And I'm going to use about half of this 8-ounce package. So I'm going to be shredding about 4 ounces of cheddar cheese. And back to the bacon again. This is looking really good. You could totally eat this the way it is right now, but I want to get every little bit of fat rendered off that bacon that I can. I want to cook it all the way until it's just about burnt, but not burnt. We're going to need that fat because we're going to cook the Brussels sprouts in that fat here in a few minutes. While that bacon is finishing up, I'm just going to dice up an onion real quick, and I'm just going to put that in with the Brussels sprouts. This is optional, but I felt like putting in some onion tonight. And I know you clicked on a Brussels sprouts video, but here's the other star of the show tonight. These are some pork chops that I prepared earlier with some seasoning. They just kind of been sitting there waiting to go on the grill while I've been preparing these Brussels sprouts. But that grill's been heating up, and I'm just going to clean off those grates and deposit those pork chops right on the grill. And back inside, that bacon is looking just about perfect right there. So I'm going to go ahead and get that bacon out of the pan. And as I'm pulling the bacon out of the pan, I'm going to let any grease that's on there kind of drip back into the pan. Because again, we want to use that here in the next step. So in goes the Brussels sprouts and the onions. And I'm going to give this a real good stir and mix up and just kind of get everything coated in that bacon grease. This might take a minute or two. Just kind of stir it around until all the Brussels sprouts are looking kind of glossy, that are coated in that really good flavorful bacon grease. I still got the pan on medium heat, and I'm going to put the lid on and let those Brussels sprouts start to steam and cook. While that's happening, I'm going to take a knife and chop up that bacon into little bits because we are definitely putting that back in the pan. No doubt about that. I like pretty small bits, but if you like big chunks of bacon, you can leave them in big chunks, however you like it. And back in the pan with the bacon, at this point I'm just going to add a little bit of seasoning, just a tiny little bit of salt, some pepper, and also some garlic powder. And you don't want to add too much salt here because the bacon is already salty, so you could easily oversalt the dish here if you added too much salt. If you're on a low salt diet or something like that, just skip it. There's plenty of flavor here as it is. Of course, if you're on a low salt diet, I suppose maybe you're not supposed to be eating bacon, but I won't tell anybody. Lid goes back on. We're going to finish cooking these Brussels sprouts. We're going to check them about every 2 minutes or so and give them a little stir just to make sure nothing's burning. And I like the Brussels sprouts to be pretty tender. You can stop the cooking at any time you like, whether you want them kind of crispy or you're really mushy, whichever way you like to eat them. But I like them probably what I would call crisp tender. They still have some firmness to it, but definitely no crunch. But all in all, that probably will take another 5 to 7 minutes with the lid on, and again, checking to stir every 2 minutes or so. Meanwhile, it's time to get those pork chops off the grill. Oh, those are looking good. These are bone-in pork chops, my favorite kind. I didn't use meat thermometer on these tonight. I got a pretty good gauge in my head of what they should be, but 145 is the optimal temp for pork chops, in my opinion. But I think these pork chops are looking pretty good. Lots of juice coming out already. I'm going to throw some foil on those just to keep them warm and let them rest for a couple of minutes while we finish up the Brussels sprouts. And once the Brussels sprouts are cooked to my liking, I'm going to add that cheese in and just give that a mix up, get that cheese spread around there. It'll work itself in all the nooks and crannies in the Brussels sprouts, and as you can see, we've got the bacon in there too. Oh, this is looking really good. Time to serve it up, and we're just having just a 2-component dinner tonight. Just these jazzed up Brussels sprouts and these grilled pork chops. And as you can see, the Brussels sprouts are tender and they're falling apart. And they've got that bacon and cheese all mixed in there. That bacon grease is adding tons of flavor. I tell you what, if you got somebody that doesn't like Brussels sprouts at all, have them try this. They might change their mind. But that's my recipe for bacon cheesy Brussels sprouts. I hope you found that useful. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.